Well, welcome everybody to today's webinar on the Business Builder's Blueprint, which I'll refer to primarily as simply the Blueprint. I'm so happy to have the opportunity to present this today, and I'm just delighted that you've taken a little bit of time out of your day to attend. And my goal today is for you to consider this time investment to be worth. We're a global membership organization of business owners, entrepreneurs, and leaders. We help our members grow their businesses, earn greater profits, achieve greater balance in their lives, and align their teams through a combination of peer boards, individual coaching, and strategic planning and execution. So our peer boards are groups of 5 to 10 local business owners and leaders who meet monthly to help each other on the challenges and opportunities facing each other's businesses. TAB's been around for about 30 years and operates in 22 countries globally. So who is today's webinar for? Well, we have 3 audiences today. So first of all, TAB members, members of existing TAB boards and or private coaching to help them in their business. So TAB members have access to the Business Builder's Blueprint online system. Secondly, would be other business owners and leaders who are not members of the alternative board. I also hope that these attendees will get some specific, concrete takeaways from this webinar. They don't have access to the online Blueprint tool, but I'm going to focus today more on the process than on the online system in this webinar. And then third are TAB facilitators and coaches who are very skilled and trained on helping business owners run their businesses more strategically and are familiar with the Business Builder's Blueprint, but may also be seeking an insight or two to help bring back to their members. So we have 3 distinct audiences here today. And my goal is for each attendee to leave this webinar time. My presentation will take about 30 minutes, and then we'll open it up for questions. So the Blueprint, it's both a process and an online system for running a business more strategically. It's both a planning tool and an execution tool for running a business more effectively. I'll attempt to be clear today about describing the process versus the online system. So the Blueprint is quite robust. So rather than go broad today, I'm going to drill down on 3 specific areas of the Blueprint that I expect folks will find relevant to their businesses. So whether you have access to the Blueprint system or not, I structured this webinar so you can identify concrete steps you can apply to your business. So let's start with some questions. Do you have a crystal clear vision for the future of your company? Do your employees know it? Do they buy in? Have you taken the time to analyze your business in a systematic way, to identify the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities to pursue them? Is your industry changing or new competitors emerging? What other threats are you facing? Are you taking concrete steps to respond to these threats? What areas do you need to improve on as the leader of your business? You need to communicate better, motivate more, negotiate better. What concrete steps are you taking to become a better leader? Have you clearly defined how your product or service offering is different and better than competitive offerings in your space? Your customers understand your points of differentiation. How about your prospects? Do you have a clearly defined culture based on the values that form the foundation of your business? Do you hire and fire to build the right culture Do you evaluate your employees both on the job performance as well as the cultural fit within your business? When your customers interact with your business, does their experience consistently match the culture and the values that you're working to promote? Are you thinking about an exit? Do you have the right leadership team in place to support this transition? Do you have a culture of accountability where everyone knows what's expected of them and consistently perform at a high level? Do you run your business strategically from a documented plan, or is it run more tactically or even reactively? Or do you have a great plan on paper, but struggle with getting it implemented? Do you run your business based on well-defined metrics, not just lagging financial indicators, but leading indicators that will predict the future success of your business? So these are the kinds of questions that a business blueprint addresses. So let's talk a little bit about the blueprint. So we've been, as TAB, working with private business owners for about 30 years, and we've identified some things that successful businesses have in common. So they have a clear vision that employees understand and embrace. They have a values-based culture that's followed by all employees. They have a clearly differentiated offering from their competitors. The owners delegate key tasks to employees and hold them accountable. The priorities and resource investments are driven by a strategic plan. Their business success is measured objectively using well-defined performance indicators, and the people are nurtured as their most important asset. So what is the Business Builder's Blueprint? It's the industry-leading strategic business management platform. It's both a process and an online system. It's built specifically for owners and leaders of private businesses. It incorporates not a traditional strategic planning process or platform. It's a practical approach to both creating and implementing your strategic plan. So it starts with a comprehensive assessment. So we believe in diagnosing before prescribing. It aligns the business owner's personal vision of success and their company vision. It requires a level of prioritization to focus on the activities that will have the greatest impact. Delegation and accountability are integral parts of the blueprint, and performance metrics underlie the blueprint. So it's, as I mentioned, it's a very robust platform for both identifying the strategic direction of the business and achieving it. It's both a planning and an implementation platform. And I'm not gonna dive into all of these different areas, specific areas. First of all, strategic differentiation. Secondly, values and culture. And third, key performance indicators. So first, let's look at the strategic advantage area. So I'm going to go to this in the blueprint as well. Again, I'll primarily discuss the process and not the tool. So the strategic advantage exercise helps business owners identify the strategic elements of their business. So this exercise helps business owners create a clear message for customers and prospects about how their product or service is different and better than competitive offerings. So my experience is that when you ask a business owner, what makes your offering special? Why do your customers buy? The response often is not very clear. So they might say things like, we provide the best service, or we have the best people. But do they really know what the value of their offering is in the eyes of their customer? And does their messaging to the marketplace reflect that value? As I'm sure you've noticed, customer expectations are getting really, really high. So even if you have a well-defined value proposition, does it still match what customers and prospects are expecting? I also find that some business owners are not really on top of the latest innovation by their competitors and aren't always aware of emerging and even the possibly disruptive competitors in their space. So the strategic advantage exercise helps you to clarify the value of your product or service and how it's different and better than competitive offerings. So it encompasses three things. Number one, it helps you specify the value of your product or service that I'll also refer to as your offering that it provides to customers. Number two, it helps you identify the key points of differentiation that your offering provides over competitive offerings. And number three, it helps you identify your unique value proposition. So as a result of this exercise, you should have a much more clear value proposition that you can communicate through your marketing material and sales conversations. So the first step of the strategic advantage exercise identifies the value of your solution offering to your customers. So this exercise is not about identifying the features of your offering. Instead, it should be 100% focused on the value that your offering provides or the benefits to your customers. So a good way to think about this is in terms of pains and gains. So typically, solutions that customers find valuable either overcome some pain points that they would experience, type of gain or benefits. Exercise, try to put yourself in the shoes of your customer. What would they say are the pains relieved, or the gains derived from your offering? If you're not sure, a customer survey is a great way to uncover that value. So let's take a look at this example in the blueprint. So listed over here on the left is the value provided to customers for a custom metal fabrication business. So the value from their customer's perspective includes the flexibility to create custom solutions, the best return on investment in the industry, and a few other items. And you can just type in additional items of value here and click add. And you want to put the value to your customers put them in order of priority. But you can see that this list is building a list of value that your customers receive. So the second step of the strategic advantage process is identifying your differentiators. So what are differentiators? So those are how an offering is different and better than competitive offerings. And so different and better are the important words. So if your offering is different in some way than competitive offerings, but not significantly better in the eyes of your customers, then it's not really an important differentiator. So while working through this exercise, the best practice is to think about your primary competitor. This could either be the market leader, the competitor you compete against the most, or an emerging competitor that is starting to siphon off market share. So it's important to think about this from your customer's perspective. If you ask them to compare your offering to other competitive offerings, what would they say? So a good way to gather this type of market intelligence is to do an exit interview with departing customers, especially if they go over to a new solution. Ask them why. So in this particular example, you can just see here that they've identified a few of the key differentiators of their competitors. But you can see that these are concrete items. They're facts. They're not just perceptions or beliefs. And as you work through this exercise, you may identify other differentiators that you would like your offering to provide, but it's not currently a reality. It's something you're aspiring towards. Or maybe it's only partially realized. That's okay. And in fact, it's a good outcome of this exercise. So thinking through this exercise will help identify not only what your strategic advantage is right now, but also how it needs to evolve. So the third step of the strategic advantage is developing your unique value proposition. So you may have heard this area referred to as unique selling proposition, identifying the value of your offering, and your key differentiators will go a long way to developing your unique value proposition. So your unique value proposition provides a structured method for developing your message that clearly communicates the value of your offering to your customers and prospects and differentiates it from competitive offerings. So there's a very structured form here within the blueprint, and you would just go through the process of filling out each of these boxes based on the prompts. So the first part is to identify for. It describes who your target customers, your target market is. And you want to identify that as specifically as possible. So the better defined your market is, the better you can customize your messaging and your offering to them. The next is the who field. So this identifies what the market need is for your offering, or if they have other offerings, what their current dissatisfaction is. Next, you identify your product or service category. That field identifies the problems that you solve for your customers. Unlike the other competitive offerings that will be listed here. And then finally, the last box identifies your points of differentiation. So once you've completed this exercise for your business, you'll have a well thought out definition of your value proposition. So the final and last part of strategic advantage is to put together your positioning statement. So this is a summary of your value proposition that can be communicated to your target market in 1 or 2 sentences. This should flow pretty easily from the exercises already completed in this section. So Mark Twain once wrote that I didn't have time to write a short letter, so I wrote a long one. The same idea applies here. Creating a short and powerful positioning statement is not easy to do. But taking the time to craft an effective statement is very important for acquiring new clients and customers. So that's it. So it's probably clear how having this unique value proposition in such a structured format will help you communicate your offering and your points of differentiation to your market. And while the blueprint tool provides the structure for doing this, you can follow the steps outlined here with or without an online tool. All right, next, let's look at values and culture. So one of the most interesting questions I find in business is who is more important, your employees or your customers? I would say that employees are most important. Engaged employees lead to loyal customers. Engaged employees are employees who have the right skills, who know what's expected of them. They feel valued and they're passionate about what a business does and where it's going. So how do we get there? Well, it starts with culture. So every business has a culture. Some have the kind of culture the owner really wants and is proud of. Others have somehow developed a less than ideal culture, and in some cases, even kind of an unhealthy culture. So strong culture starts with the values that you as the owner want your business to be about. Your culture represents how your values are lived by your employees. Because your employees interact with customers, your culture projects those values through your employees to your customers. Experience your business it's from the outside in. So culture and brand are closely aligned, and we're going to talk about that. And ideally, the culture that your company projects leads to your customers experiencing these same values when they interact with your business. So culture and brand are closely related. So I believe that the strongest example of a business culture these days is Airbnb. What they've managed to do is pretty amazing. So they get hundreds of thousands of hosts from every corner of the world, none of whom are their employees, to project a service culture to their guests. This in turn leads to mostly great experiences for their guests. So Brian Chesky, who's one of Airbnb's co-founders, believes that it all starts with values. Alexandra, I'm hearing a little bit of background noise or static.
Yes, I'm trying to get rid of that. I'm sorry, Dave.
Okay, so Brian Chesky, one of Airbnb's founder, he believes that it all starts with values. So most businesses have a list of values, but they tend to look the same as everybody else's values. So they typically include things like honesty and integrity. What Chesky argues is that these basic values should be expected of any employee. What values should be instead are the secret sauce that distinguishes your business from others, and it leads to a competitive. The first step in this exercise is to identify your values. That starts with identifying your important values. So your important values is a longer, kind of a laundry list of values that you're considering ingraining into your business. Once you've identified your important list of values, you then select a subset of this list and move them to the very important category. So the very important values are those that must be embraced by all employees, no matter what the situation. So this is an iterative process. Start with the important values and then identify the very important ones from that list. So within the blueprint, you can see that there's a big list of values that we've assembled based on great companies, and you can just take some of those values that seem to be relevant to your business and drop them into that important list. And then from there, identify a few of those and drag those over to the very important. And I just did that very quickly for demonstration purposes. This is a very thoughtful exercise to go through to figure out what is my very important list of values. And ultimately, you want to identify something like 4 to 6 type values, not too few, not too many. And if you don't have access to the blueprint system, you can contact me and I'll be happy to send you this big list of values on the right-hand side there. So once you have your list of very important values that you want your business to be all about, ask yourself, how close are we really to practicing those values? So I like to think of values and culture as a business's best self. That is, how does the business ideally want to perform? So in most businesses, there's a gap between the value that the owner wants and the actual values practiced by employees on a daily basis. So the important thing is, as I see it, in building a great culture, is practicing the desired values more often than not and making steady progress towards practicing the desired values more consistently. So once you've defined your values, the next step is to create a culture statement. You can see one there. So why do we have the culture statement? Well, it's a statement that gives employees some more information that helps them understand what the values mean. So a lot of times they might look at the list of values and say, I understand what these values are, but how do I need to apply those in my job? What does that really mean around here? So taking the time to take those values and boil them down into a short paragraph in a culture statement really helps the employees understand better what those values mean to them. And then the third step is to develop a brand promise. So you might see the word brand in a values and culture area. How does that apply to, isn't brand a marketing thing? How does that apply to culture and values? Well, a brand promise looks at things from your customer's perspective. So there are some businesses where the staff acts one way when how employees interact with each other and how they interact with their customers. In these businesses, the employee experience is consistent with the customer experience. So when you're defining your brand experience, ask yourself, when your customers interact with your business and with your employees, either directly or electronically, what do you expect their experience to be like? Do they experience the same values that you're attempting to project through your culture statement? Your brand promise reflects a commitment to the experience your customers will have when interacting with your business. Brand promise is not a guarantee, but it is a commitment to the experience of your customers each time they engage with your business. Writing out your brand promise will help your employees understand and better deliver on the experience you expect them to provide to your customers. So as hopefully you can see here, values, culture, and brand promise are all tightly interrelated. All right, the third and last blueprint exercise that we're going to talk about here today are key performance indicators, or KPIs. KPIs are used to keep score for your business. It allows your team to know whether or not they're winning. A KPI is a quantifiable measurement. It's used to measure and predict your success. KPIs can be used to compare your performance to the historical performance of your business or compare to industry benchmarks. So there are two broad types of KPIs. They're leading indicators and lagging indicators. Lagging indicators are important, but they provide a look backwards. There's no action that you can take now to impact a lagging indicator. So financial metrics are lagging indicators. For example, there's nothing you can do now to impact last month's gross profit. Lagging indicators are like driving a car while looking in the rearview mirror. Leading indicators are metrics that provide an early warning of how your business is doing so that you can make changes to impact the performance of your business. Leading indicators are operational metrics, such as the number of new leads received, the amount of work completed, or the throughput in a manufacturing system. Leading indicators provide the visibility for you to take action when a measure is running behind the goal, so that you ultimately achieve your financial targets. So for example, if you're in the middle of the month and your lead flow is running behind what you expect, you can take steps to increase the lead flow. For example, placing more outbound calls to generate more leads and ultimately lead to more sales. So the blueprint provides a robust, general purpose method for setting up and tracking KPIs. Just going to go to the blueprint area, in the KPI area in the blueprint. So this webinar is not a blueprint training, so I'm not going to go into the details. But let's take a quick look at a KPI that's already been set up so I can be a little bit more specific here. So let's take a look at monthly product shipments. So most KPIs are tracked monthly, although some are tracked quarterly, some are tracked weekly, and some are even tracked daily. So with KPIs, what you do is you set a starting point value called a baseline value. This is where that KPI is today. So for example, if it's leads, your baseline value may be, we're currently generating 50 leads a month. Say at the end of the year, we want to be at 75 leads a month. So in this example, the blue line represents what your goal is from the baseline to your goal value. And you can see that it just gets a little bit higher each month. You also want to track the value of the KPI for the last year, so you can provide a year-over-year comparison. And so the last year value is tracked here in green. So once the KPIs are set up, review them on a monthly basis with your leadership team. And the black line here represents the actual value for that KPI each month. And you'll enter that into the system each month or into a spreadsheet that you use to track this. So let's discuss a few best practices for KPIs. First, don't just keep them within the executive team. Each group or even each individual should have KPIs for their areas of your business. Second, KPIs should not be set top down. The employees who are responsible for the achievement of a KPI won't really take ownership if the KPI goal is handed down to them. Instead, the KPI goal should be set by the person who's responsible for achieving it and has the greatest impact of it. Now, of course, if you feel like a KPI goal is set by an employee, but it's not ambitious enough, have a discussion with them and kind of work that out. But each case exceeding the KPI goals. KPIs are simple to set up, but they're not easy. Finding the right drivers takes a great deal of thought. They may to track them regularly, get accurate data. But running your business based on KPIs will allow you to drive your car by looking through the windshield rather than in the rearview mirror. So that concludes the demonstration portion and the process discussion for those three areas within the blueprint. Just a few summary comments. The blueprint aligns the business owner's personal vision with company vision. There's a diagnostic process prior to prescribing. It's both a planning as well as an execution platform. It allows business owners and leaders to spend more time on their business, not just in the business. It has built-in prioritization, accountability, and measurement. strategically. So that concludes the content that I plan to present here today, both the presentation and the demonstration. Really do hope that everyone got at least a few takeaways that they can take to their business or think about. To learn more, if you're a TAB member, contact your facilitator for any more information. And for non-members, feel free to contact me at dscarola@thealternativeboard.com.
Great. Thank you so much, Dave. That was very informative, and I key takeaways out of this webinar today.
Fantastic.
So it looks like we have a couple of questions that came in. So the first question asks, if I had to pick one of the 3 things presented today as the most important thing to work on, what would you suggest?
It's like asking me which of my kids is my favorite. So that's a tough one. You know, I would probably say, look, they're all really important. I'd probably say KPIs. And, you know, it's not that the other areas are any less important than the KPIs, but I do think the KPIs are, you know, it's something that all businesses can really get their hands around. You know, it takes time, lots of time, to improve the culture, to improve the customer brand experience, that kind of thing, which is done in the values and the culture area. But KPIs, it's something that identifying a handful of KPIs and starting to track them and reviewing them regularly in leadership team meetings and things like that. I think it's the most concrete thing that you can do relatively quickly, even if you sort of change the KPIs that you're tracking over time, relatively quickly, that can help to change even the culture of your business to be that one that's maybe run more subjectively to being run more objectively. One, I would say KPIs.
Great. We have a couple of people that asked the same question. This question is, how do TAB members access the blueprint online?
Okay. You go to a URL. It's blueprintboards.com.
Great. Another question asks, I've identified values for my business. How do I get them better ingrained into the business?
Boy, that's another really good question. And it's, at least my experience is that, you know, getting values. So look, you did the first step, right? Identifying what the values are. That's not. It's easy to create a long list of values. It's hard to create. Here's the 5 that we're absolutely gonna live by. But once you identify those, you know, there's no. It's, you know, it's just a day in, day out process. You know, one day at a time. Let's get a little bit better at living these values. So a few things that come to mind for me that I've used with businesses and all over the years. You know, is number one, you know, catch people doing things right. And you know, sometimes I do think in some businesses we're we're sometimes reluctant to criticize employees or whatever, and we want to be very careful that we do that in a constructive way. But we do want to identify when you do see an example of somebody that's not living one of those values within the business, you want to have a conversation with them, try to make it positive and constructive, but point that out. But just as importantly, catch people doing the right thing, catch people practicing those values, and let them know. And so try to do that every day. Bring your teams together, and every time that the employees are together as a group, try to identify stories. So stories are the best way to build culture. So identify stories where employees lived one of the values in their business. Be as concrete as possible. Those are the best stories, right? When they're vague, they just don't land as well. So make them concrete, and try to develop the culture where employees are catching each other doing the right things and complimenting each other when they see their coworkers living those things within the business. And even when you bring the whole team together, maybe a good thing to do is just go around the group, depending on the size and everything, and ask the employees, say, can you identify when somebody else lived one of the values here, when you saw one of your coworkers doing the right thing. And everybody on this call is the leader of their business. And I would also say, we all try our best every day to be our best selves, but sometimes we're not. And if you feel like, darn, I didn't handle that as I should have, and I want to call that out to the group here and just say that I don't feel like I've lived our values here in this particular case. So it's just a day in, day out kind of thing. But taking that time to reflect: are we living our values? Are we getting a little bit better each day? And really working through those stories is the way, in my experience, to really build a great culture.
Wonderful. One of the registrants or attendees asked, how do you message this plan that's put into the blueprint to your employees?
Great. Good question. So first of all, my advice is to involve your employees just as much as you can. So we just drilled down into 3 areas of the blueprint. So that what we didn't do is we didn't discuss today, kind of the business diagnostic, which identifies the strengths and weaknesses and gaps in the business. We didn't discuss the company vision, which is where does the company want to be in 3 to 5 years or longer in the future. We didn't discuss the SWOT analysis, where a business identifies the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of the business. So there's lots of other parts of the blueprint, including developing a strategic plan for the business. So I always recommend that, to the extent that you can, involve your employees in all of those exercises. So maybe as the CEO of the business, you know, 5 years into the future, bring the team together, and at least my recommendation wouldn't just be, here it is, guys, but here's my best thinking. This is really where I want to take the company. And what do you think? Do you have any other ideas? Do you think there's some elements of where we should go as a business that you think we should add to our vision? So, and it's not, and I wouldn't say, everything that someone suggests, yeah, I'm gonna put that into our vision necessarily, but at least you've opened up that process where the employees are heard, and chances are probably you'll get a few good ideas out of that process. And the same goes for every step of the way. Identifying the values, identifying the culture, the strengths and weaknesses of the business, and ultimately the strategic plan. You as the CEO, founder, owner, leader of the business, you'll identify, here are the goals that I really want to achieve in the next few years, and specifically in the next year, and maybe start at that point and roll that out. But then identifying additional folks in the team that are going to be very instrumental for helping you achieve those different areas, involve them in those areas. So say you have a goal of growing your sales from 1 to 2 million in the next 3 years. When you set that goal, bring the sales folks together, maybe one person in the company, maybe a couple, bring them together and say, this is what I want to get to. I want to get us to $2 million in the next couple of years. Let's discuss, how we can get there. What ideas do you have, and all. So my recommendation is to involve the team to the greatest extent possible in developing the plan. They're going to have greater ownership as a result, and then using the plan itself. Where strategic plans or business plans fall down is they're always good. I've never seen a plan that you look at it and it doesn't feel like there's not a lot of thought and a lot of good ideas that went into it, but there's not enough attention paid to the plan on a weekly basis on how are we doing against it, what metrics are we tracking, what are we ahead on, what are we falling behind on, how do we need to adjust that plan. And so using the plan not only as something that we create the strategic direction and the things we need to do, but also as setting up the meetings and all for the team to review how we're doing and really use it as an implementation tool as well as a key part of getting that buy-in.
Great. It looks like we have time for one more question. This person asks, I've done some strategic exercises like these for my business. I really like what comes out of them, but I struggle with getting them implemented in the business. How does the blueprint help implement these things in my business?
Yeah, so I think that's kind of related to the last one. So, when you involve the staff to, maybe not necessarily at the highest level of the plan, but in the how are we gonna achieve these goals? What specific steps do we need to take? And when those steps really get delegated down throughout the organization to individual employees, and they know what's expected of them within the plan. When employees have KPIs for their areas, and they're clear on those, and they're tracking them and all, those are key parts of it. Holding the accountability meetings, regularly to review the actions and tactics within the plan and the KPIs as well. That's a good area also. And then finally, also having a good process in place for working through issues as well. So, and there are things within the blueprint for, for all the things being discussed here. But having a good process for when we run into issues, when we run into obstacles, we implemented something that we said we're going to implement it, but it's not having the right kinds of results. Having a process in place where you get the right people together and work as a team on how do we resolve this and all, because sometimes you can even have a good plan and you start on the execution, but when you start running into the obstacles and everything, that's where things break down. So having a good methodology involving your team for issue resolution is an important part of that execution as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Dave, for taking the time to present on the blueprint. I think a lot of our listeners probably got a lot of good takeaways for their business. If you're a TAB member and you have any questions or want to learn more, please contact your facilitator. And if you're not a TAB member, please take the time now to jot down Dave's email address, and you can contact him via email. You can check out all of our previous BOSS webinars on demand by visiting our website and clicking on webinars. Join us on June 19th for our webinar featuring customer experience as the subject. Thank you everyone for joining today, and I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their day.